Other than having a solid cardiovascular base, lifting weights is the most important thing you can do for healthy aging. It's not even close.
I am Judd Lienhard, former Army Ranger, college linebacker. I've been a strength and performance coach for over 15 years. Let's get into it.
Why is having muscle on your body such an indicator of healthy aging? The biggest thing that increased muscle mass does, it increases your insulin sensitivity. What happens when we move less? We lose muscle. And what happens when we lose muscle? Our resting metabolic rate goes down. This is all just to remind you that it's not your fucking metabolism, okay? In America, when we think strength training, we picture barbells, all right? And God damn it, it doesn't have to be that way. Well, weight training isn't bodybuilding, all right? Reconsider what strength training is and what it's doing for you. The choices you make now and the habits you make now in your 20s and 30s, it's gonna be really hard to overcome that and fix those things when you're in your 50s and 60s. So please start making those changes now. Let's start lifting weights for our health and for the people around us because we love them and not just because we want to look good, because we can have both. Hey, thank you guys for listening. I just wanted to take a brief break to ask you guys a couple questions. First, are you happy with your current state of athleticism? Second, do you feel like you used to maybe be an athlete, but you've lost some of that athleticism and you feel like you just can't regain it due to either age or injuries? For those of you that don't know my background, for over a decade, I was a speed, strength, and performance coach for dozens of elite athletes. And I used that experience to build a program called MASS Method. It stands for Movement, Athleticism, Strength, and Speed. It's how I train, and it's how I've been able to hang on to a lot of my performance and athleticism I had in my youth by tweaking the program in a way that accounts for some of my current limitations and limitations that we all face as we age. So whether you're, in your early 20s in your prime and you want to optimize the athleticism you already have, or you're getting older like most of us and you want to regain some of that athleticism, this program is perfect for you. It's very affordable. It's available exclusively on my training app, and that can be found either on my website or on my socials. My website is juddlienhard.com, JUDDLIENHARD.com. That will be in the show notes too if you need to help spelling that again. But there's 14 different training blocks right now. I add new training blocks several times a year. Right now, there's over a year's worth of training in that app. You can try it for free for a week. Also, I have options available for people that don't have a lot of time or equipment to spend, minimal equipment and limited time options. There's literally something in there for everybody. Some of my favorite feedback is when people tell me that they do this workout with their entire family, or that they've done my workout now for a couple months and for the first time maybe in their life, they're pain-free, or for the first time in decades, they're regaining some of their athleticism that they thought they had lost forever. It just builds me up and makes me excited to share this opportunity with you guys. And I'd love it if you just gave it a try and just see what it's all about. Try it for free for a week, cancel if you want. I guarantee you're gonna love it. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the show. So none of us are immortal. We're all gonna die. I'll give you a second to sit with that thought for a second. You're not gonna fucking live forever. We have an expiration date, and if you live to be 100, no matter what you do, no matter what you put in your body and all shots you take or, special, nutrition and dietary habits you follow, you're going to be lucky to live to 100. All right. So the key here isn't to make us immortal. It's to help us make the most out of the years that we have on this earth, because our cells are designed to age. Okay. And unless they can come up with something that, makes our telomeres not get shorter over time and, deal with the, oxidative stress. It's funny because the two things we need to live are also two things that kill us. Like oxygen is not great for our bodies, even though we need it. And calories and the need to consume and digest and process nutrients to stay alive also, contribute to aging. Well, what are you going to do, right? I mean, we're not meant to live forever. But we all want to be. We don't want to be that grandpa that can't get up out of his chair and play with his grandkids, right? We don't want to be that 40-year-old that doesn't want to go out and run around the yard with his kids playing tag, that just sits there. We all know those people. They're everywhere nowadays. It's pervasive in our society. People that are 40 and 50 and look like they're 60 and 70. So what can we do to kind of correct this and prevent it from happening. And if you're my age, maybe even in your late 30s, you start to think about that kind of stuff and start to think less about just looking good and, being attractive. We all still want that. But when you reach your late 30s, things start to happen that didn't happen in your 20s, like injuries that like really mess with you. Before, sprained muscle or something, sprain or a muscle strain or something wasn't a big deal. Now all of a sudden it's like you get arthritis or an injury just doesn't go away for months on end, and you realize how mortal you really are. I think people in their 20s, they don't realize their ability to recover from injury and stuff is so pronounced that they're almost in some ways like immortal, like a kid gets hurt or you see how like fast they heal from things. And then when you get older, things just don't heal. And you understand how fragile you are. And a lot of your training and stuff and nutrition is designed to just keep you in the game, So what can we do? Well, when people look at people when you hear the word strength train, you think of weightlifting. And in our society, when we think of weightlifting, we picture bodybuilders. Okay. And I love bodybuilding, don't get me wrong. But we all have eyes, and we see that bodybuilders don't age well. They just don't. And it's not necessarily the bodybuilding that's doing it alone. It's probably the lack of other things. Because bodybuilders tend to have certain personalities. Things, they don't happen in isolation, and trends happen where things, tend to work together. That's why, like, for so long, meat was thought to be bad for you, because it is true. People that eat more meat have worse health outcomes. But it's not the meat. It's because back in the day, people that ate more meat, they also tended to be more sedentary. They tended to eat more processed meat. They tended to smoke cigarettes and drink more alcohol. And it was all those other things that got correlated with the meat. The whole correlation isn't causation kind of thing. So the same thing for like bodybuilders. It's just dudes, and I'm one of those dudes. I mean, I'm telling you how to be healthy, but I'm struggling myself right now because I still love to just bodybuild, and I love to drink my IPAs, and I love my tequila, and I tend to stay up late some nights, and I'm struggling with it too. And I got a lot of injuries that I'm dealing with because of past mistakes, and still some stubbornness that I'm still dealing with, because I still have that blue collar Midwestern, loves to push around heavy weight and loves big muscles. I'm kind of dealing with that now, and I'm not the only one, so I feel for you though. But, we see it, and we see bodybuilders that don't age well. And then we correlate that to, well, if this person looks like that because they lift weights and they are not aging well, they're having joint replacements and they don't move very well. They don't look very young. They don't even move like they're very young. They're kind of stiff and robotic and clumsy. Then lifting weights must not be good for me. That can't possibly be the answer or one of the solutions for me hanging on to my youth. And that's a shame, Weight training isn't bodybuilding. All right. And I'm from a sports science background, and I bemoan this too. Like, bodybuilding is great, but it's like hurt our sports science background so much in this country, because we started lifting weights, for sport, for athletic improvement in like the late 60s, early 70s. Before that, it was going to make you like muscle bound and slow, right? And it had a profound impact. Like Nebraska is the best known team for this. And it was just initially like the guys that were sent into rehab, and some guys started having to lift weights for the rehab. And they noticed when they came back, they were better than anybody else on the team. But that being said, as great as that was, it was still based on a bodybuilding culture at the time, because bodybuilding was bigger, lifting weights was only the domain of bodybuilders in the 50s and 60s. Athletes didn't lift weights. So it was almost like happenstance that they kind of realized like bodybuilding, as compared to a complete lack of weight training, does make people more athletic. But then in Europe and other places, the Soviet Union, they didn't have that. So their weight training was tailored more towards just athletic performance. And then the hypertrophy side of it was like, well, we will develop hypertrophy as a side effect or strategically at certain times of years to help with very specific things. It was all performance based. And it's getting better and better, but like bodybuilding still plagues sports science, and bodybuilding plagues our general population too, because people are hesitant to lift weights because they don't want to be bodybuilders. And then also when they do start lifting weights, they start lifting weights like bodybuilders. And I love bodybuilders. I do a lot of bodybuilding workouts. In my program, I have bodybuilding workouts. I love it. And I think you can still do some bodybuilding type stuff and still have big muscles and be okay. But we have to understand that there are better ways to do it. That being said, lifting weights, other than having a solid cardiovascular base, okay, lifting weights is the most important thing you can do for healthy aging. It's not even close, okay? Now, by cardiovascular base, I mean you have to have healthy mitochondria, you have to have healthy enzymatic activity and blood flow. I went over this in the last. And that doesn't take much though. Just, easy cardio a few times a week or keeping your daily activity up is all you need for that. You don't need to be a distance runner or a cyclist. You don't need a sky high VO2 max, even though a higher VO2 max is good. After that, after you establish a good solid cardiovascular base, decent mitochondrial density, strength training is hands down the best thing you can do for your health. Why? Why is having muscle on your body such an indicator of healthy aging and have such a profound impact on healthy aging? Well, I'm about to tell you. So especially after 30. Now, why is it 30? Do our bodies go through some like fundamental change where our metabolism slows down? Because that's what we hear all the time, right? We're like, oh, my metabolism's so much slower. I used to be able to eat whatever I want. It's my metabolism, my fucking metabolism. It's funny because like back in the day, like fucking 35-year-old farmer didn't look that much worse than a 28-year-old farmer. They just made more lines in their face, maybe a couple like missing fingers or something. But it's just funny. But nowadays it's like, like 30, I hit 30, my metabolism crashed. And you especially hear this, I hate to say it, from women, because women, even more so than men, who bodybuild and then it just happens to have some health benefits for them. Women, it's getting better and better, but especially like when I was a kid, women, they avoided weights like the plague. And then they hit 30, that magic number apparently, where their metabolism crashed. And then it was all these secrets they looked for to try to stay healthy, like secrets to get their metabolism going again or all this shit. It's not your fucking metabolism. I mean, it's just been proven. It's not your metabolism. Your activity drastically slows down once you hit about 30 years old. And it has nothing to do with the 30-year thing directly. It's people's lifestyles tend to change at about the same time. Like there are trends, there are commonalities, there's predictive metrics. Things go together, just like red meat and cigarettes used to go together. That's why they thought eggs were bad for you. And when you hit 30, things happen. Well, what happens? Well, you get in a relationship, right? And then you start having kids. You start taking on more financial responsibility. You start having to repay debts. You start taking on debts. So you start having to work more hours. And the nature, forgive me if I'm telling you shit you already know. But this is all just to remind you that it's not your fucking metabolism, okay? So you start sleeping less because you have kids. Now, anybody that says, listen, if you haven't had kids, keep your fucking mouth shut. Like you have no right to have an opinion on shit, all right? Until you've had kids, you cannot comprehend how hard it is to stay healthy and make healthy decisions with children, okay? Now, if you have kids and you still do that, I applaud you. I think that's awesome. And a lot of people do, and it's really cool. And you should look at those people rather than looking at people that have kids and are out of shape and are struggling for a lot of reasons and like judging them if you haven't had kids. Look at people that have kids and stay in shape because that's impressive shit. And you can have an opinion once you have a kid because you have no idea. And having a kid is the most wonderful thing that can happen because you truly become selfless. You look at that thing sitting there and it is the greatest thing you've ever seen. And you'll experience true love for the first time in your life. I promise you. But that thing will keep you up every night. That thing will keep you worried. That thing will try to kill itself every other minute it's awake. That thing needs constant supervision and you pour your energy into that. So your sleep goes down. You start investing a lot of money into it. And so you invest less time and energy into yourself and you have to work longer hours. And the way we work nowadays is we don't work in the fields. We don't even really work in the factories. We sit at a desk. Okay. And I feel bad for people because people are like, you need to move more. It's like, okay, how am I supposed to fucking move more? All right. I get up at 6 a.m. I get my kids' breakfast ready. I get in the car. I drive 45 minutes to work because the only job I can get is in a place I can't afford to live. I go in there. I sit at a desk all day long and I eat shit food because shit food's available. I'm stressed out all day long. I get back in the car another 45 minutes to get here and I'm tired. I got no energy. At that point, all I want to do is sit down. I sit down, I stay up late watching TV, and I go to bed. And that is the norm, and that's what's expected. It takes a effort not to be that way. And it's an effort that shouldn't just be expected of everyone. And then the shit compounds because you don't move as much, you lose muscle, you don't have as much energy. And then the things you used to be able to eat, just normal things, it pisses you off because normal things you used to be able to eat, you just can't eat. Like, it's not even junk food. It's just like you want to eat a bowl of pasta or you want to have a salad with some ranch dressing or you want to have a couple beers. And it's not like you're a pig. It's not like you're gorging yourself. You just keep gaining weight and you don't know why. And it's not because of your metabolism. It's because you've slowed down. And it's understandable, but what are we going to do? Are we going to make an excuse and just say, well, throw our hands up in there and say that's life? Or are we going to try to take steps to fix it? And so what happens when we move less? We lose muscle. And what happens when we lose muscle? Our resting metabolic rate goes down. That's not even the worst thing, but that's a big thing, is we use less energy just sitting around. And that's what it is. It's not just the fact that we have a lower amount of NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. I think I butchered that. But it's like the amount of calories that we use just moving around throughout the day goes down because we're less active, but we also lose muscle mass as we age. Okay. And part of that is a change in our hormonal profile. And part of that's just natural aging. Your testosterone is going to lower a little bit as we age, but that's exacerbated by the world that we live in. And I can go into microplastics and pheromones and all this other stuff. Pheromones, it's I forgot the name of it, but you know what I'm talking about, like the chemicals from like that make shit smell good and everything it affects our testosterone. Also stress affects our testosterone. Lack of sleep affects our testosterone. And not just testosterone, it's other hormones as well, progesterone and estrogen and everything else. So a less desirable hormone profile goes into a loss of muscle mass as well. And then, with that, so the most important thing you can do is strength train to keep muscle mass so that you're not going to be able to move around as much as you used to when you were younger. You just can't. I mean, you're locked in a fucking office 9 hours a day a lot of times. So you're not going to be able to move around as much. You can try and you should, but you have to have a base of muscle mass if it's going to be, because you have to raise your resting metabolic rate somehow. Okay. And weight training, we all know, improves your hormonal profile, which also raises your resting metabolic rate. Okay. But what else? That's pretty good for maintaining a healthy weight, just right there, right? And we all know the benefits of maintaining a healthy weight. Okay. The biggest thing that increased muscle mass does, it increases your insulin sensitivity. The worst thing that can happen to us is metabolic syndrome. Okay. And that is like, as we age, our resting blood sugar goes up. Why is that bad? It creates systemic inflammation. Okay. High blood sugar affects everything negatively, from the lining of our cells to the lining of our arteries in our heart, to our mental cognition, to our eyes. It hurts our kidneys. It's a cascading effect. Why does muscle increase insulin sensitivity? Okay, well, muscle contractions on their own and muscle fibers, contracting muscles create direct pathways for glucose, independent of insulin. There are other ways to get glucose into your muscle cells without insulin, believe it or not. And muscle contraction is the biggest one. Just contracting your muscles is going to result in less blood sugar. And everything is a feedback loop. So the more the more blood sugar you have circulating, your body knows it needs to get rid of that, right? So it releases more and more insulin. So if there's less insulin in the system to begin with, then less blood sugar in the system to begin with, your body won't release as much insulin. It's that simple. But in addition to that, lifting weights increases the receptors for insulin so you become more insulin sensitive. So the insulin you do release, you respond to it better. So it works on both ends. You have less blood in your blood sugar in your system to begin with. If you have more muscles and you're doing more muscular contractions, and you are more sensitive to the insulin you produce. Okay. So high blood sugar is bad, but also producing a lot of insulin is bad too, because insulin is, it's the parasympathetic hormone. It's the hormone that makes us want to lay around, that it makes us not want to be active. So it's kind of good if we're not always pumping out insulin, I mean, that's why too much insulin will straight kill you if you take it, So we want to be very sensitive to the insulin we do produce, all right? So when you think about it, most of the calories we consume are in the form of carbohydrates and sugar if you eat a normal diet. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, all right? It's not a bad thing if when you consume those things, they get funneled into the cells right away. Now, where can we store glucose? We get stored as something called glycogen, right? Where can we store it? Well, two places. We can store it in our liver, and we can store it in our muscle tissue, in our muscle cells. So the more muscle we have, the greater capacity we have for storing glycogen. And why is that important? Because when you take in food as carbohydrates and it gets turned into blood sugar, one of two things can happen. One of three things. We either use it immediately as energy, which we don't use a lot of it as energy at any given time of the food we eat. We store it as glycogen, or we store it as fat. Now, when we store it as fat, and let's say that we're going to use it later in the day, right? So let's say you have two people. One of them's really muscular. They eat carbohydrates, and they store the glucose from those carbohydrates as glycogen in their muscles. And then the other person, they are not as muscular. They eat the same amount of food and at the same activity level, right? And they store it as fat. When it comes time to use that energy, one person releases the glycogen into their bloodstream as glucose. The other person releases the fat stores into their bloodstream as triglycerides. And we all know about triglycerides. So it doesn't really matter how healthy your diet is. If you're consuming excess calories, you're going to have a lot of triglycerides flowing through your system, especially if you're not storing those calories as in the form of glycogen in your muscle fibers. All right. So you can eat a fairly healthy diet, what's considered healthy, of low saturated fat. It doesn't matter. You're going to use the stored fat from whatever source that is as a saturated fat. All right. Now, this doesn't go into monounsaturated, polyunsaturated fats. Like, we eat those, we use those. Those are great for our blood lipid profile. This is a different thing I'm talking about. So that is a huge reason why increased muscle mass is extremely important. It directly improves your blood lipid profile. Now, this goes back into bodybuilding. You take a bunch of androgens, not just testosterone, but mainly other types of steroids. It doesn't matter. Let's separate natural strength training. Let me go back to this for a second without confusing you, from natural strength training from bodybuilding. Okay. So there is a point of diminishing returns for muscle mass. All right. A little bit of muscle mass is really good for you. If your body mass index gets above a certain point, and I'm going to be honest, I have too much muscle on my body right now. It's probably not great for me. And the last time I got my blood lipid profile checked, it wasn't that great, honest. Not as good as you would think it'd be, right? It's getting better, because I've changed some things. But so if you have an extraordinary amount of muscle mass, it taxes your system. Look around. Do you see any 80-year-old bodybuilders walking around that are big muscular dudes? No, you don't. And there's a reason for that. It's because they fucking die. Because it's a lot of stress. They either die or they lose the muscle mass. And they can still have a lot of it, a good amount, and look like a healthy 80-year-old, but they don't look like a bodybuilder when they're 80. Okay. And I'm sure you can search the internet and find a handful of examples, but the exception proves the rule there. All right. Just like you don't see a lot of obese 90-year-olds. It doesn't matter if it's muscle or fat. It's still tissue that your organs and bones have to support. So there is a point of diminishing returns. But I will say that it is very, very hard to get there if you're not on steroids. Okay. So if you're a bodybuilder that doesn't do a lot of cardiovascular activity, has an extreme amount of muscle mass, and takes androgens, which directly hurt your blood lipid profile and cause an organ strain on your kidneys and especially your liver, if it's their orals especially, but also just create more effort for your organs in general to support all that extra muscle tissue. It's not going to be good for you. So let me clarify this before I go too far. But it is very hard to get there if you're a natural bodybuilder, I'm telling you. Or even if you take like a TRT amount. Like there is a massive difference in taking a TRT amount of hormones to enhance your hormonal profile and taking bodybuilder level of steroids. Just to give you examples. So most people, when they get on TRT, first of all, they're just prescribed usually testosterone, which is the most healthy steroid there is because it's bioidentical. And they're prescribed somewhere between normally 100 to 250. Like some people prescribe 250, right? Even if they're taking 300 or 400 milligrams a week, which is double what is prescribed, okay? And high, it's not that bad for them, all right? Bodybuilders, a beginning bodybuilding dose, like for a newbie that's never done a cycle, you're talking starting at 500 milligrams of test a week. Normally stacked with another couple hundred milligrams of an oral of some sort, like Dianabol or Deca, and then usually coupled with another type of steroid called a nandrolone. So total hormones in one guy's system, one person's system that's on TRT might be 200 milligrams a week, whereas a bodybuilder that's on a like not a professional bodybuilder, not the Mr. Olympias, I'm just talking about a dude you see at the gym, is on upwards of a gram of anabolics a week. So 5 times the amount, okay? So if you're natural or if you're just on hormone replacement or whatever you want to call it, you're not going to get so much muscle that it's going to be bad for you, okay? All right, let me caveat with that. But so I'm not advocating to just become a bodybuilder here. I'm talking about strength training, which is much different. And for strength training, we don't need to be in the gym 6 days a week for an hour. A small amount of intense, focused weightlifting will go a very long way in achieving the things that I talked about. How should we do that? Okay. I've talked about it before. And you can do body splits if you want. It's totally fine. I like body splits too. But like I said, I maybe don't work out in the best way. You know what I mean? Because I like to be a bodybuilder. So maybe it's not the most healthy way, you know? And people are always hesitant to take advice from people like me that don't do things in the perfect way possible because they're like, why should I listen to this guy? Well, I mean, you know, do what I do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. I don't know. Don't listen to me. I don't give a fuck. I really don't. So you can do some body part splits, like an upper lower split. That's fine. Like upper lower. So you're working out 4 days a week. Nothing wrong with that at all. All right. But like I said, the most efficient way to strength train is just do total body lifts. And when people hear total body lifts, they think, how am I going to fit? Because they're used to bodybuilding, right? Where like you have a chest day and you do like bench press and close grip bench and incline press and decline press and flies. Like, because that's what you read in Muscle and Fitness in 1993 that the dude that was on 2 grams of steroids a week was doing, right? So that's what we do. And you're like, how can I do total body? Because that took an hour and a half and now I got to do shoulders and I got to do legs. Nah, man, that's not what you have to do. So 4 to 5 working sets of every major pattern per day is all you need. So, and that's upper level. Maybe if you went hard, maybe 2 working sets. So if you do 4 sets total, a couple warm-up sets and 2 working sets of a horizontal press, right? And then maybe 1 good set of a vertical press because they have shared muscles in those 2 movement patterns, right? And then the same for back. Maybe superset the horizontal pressing with 2 good supersets of horizontal rowing, right? And then 2 good sets or 1 good set of a vertical pull, like a pull-up, you know? And then you do like 2 working sets of a squat pattern, 1 working set of a lunge pattern, 2 working sets of a hinge pattern. That is less total volume than you were probably doing just for your chest day before. And you've worked your entire body and you haven't annihilated it, but you've stimulated it. Because when you're in your early 20s, your body can handle a lot more. So we don't need to tear down our bodies every time we're in the weight room and leave there feeling exhausted because, you know, you got a life to live. You're going to want to play with your kids. You want to get out of there in an hour. You're not going to be sore for 5 days because you're not on a ton of steroids probably, and you can't lift like a bodybuilder, right? I mean, I'm on a fair amount of androgens and I still get sore as shit, man. I think I'm on 300 milligrams again of testosterone, and which is more than most people, and I still get sore as shit. So I have to keep my volume relatively low. But that being said, like, so you don't need to. And what's more, I would say you shouldn't lift like a bodybuilder. But you can fit those total body workouts. You can do those in under an hour. And then at the end, if you have some body parts you want to bring up, knock out a couple sets of bis and tris, whatever you want to do. All right. And you're going to leave there not feeling like you did much, like you could have done more. And that's the point, because in just a couple days, you're going to do it again, like something very similar. Like instead of bench press, you might just do, push-ups, or instead of like lat pull downs, you might do some chin ups, but you're going to do those patterns again in just 48 hours. So you're not going to want to be totally trashed. And like study after study now has shown that for strength gains, especially, but even some for hypertrophy, total body with more frequency and less volume per session, the total amount of volume is about the same, is far more valuable than annihilating a body once a week and just giving it a week with nothing. Okay. So you're looking at maybe 2 to 3 hours a week total of strength training. And it's going to be life-changing for you. All right. Now, most people listening to this already work out, I would guess. All right. And they already lift weights. And they're probably like me, and they love the bodybuilding splits. Like, I'm probably going to do legs today. I did do total body a couple days ago, though. But what I like to do, so I can still do my bodybuilding with, more responsible strength training, is I'll do an upper lower total split a lot, where I'll have an upper body day, I'll do a lower body day, and then I'll have like later in the week a total body day. So, if you want to do that. But a lot of people listen to this, they like their chest and tris day. They like their back and bi day. But like, man, you're getting older, dude. Just freaking think about it. Like, what's more important to you? Like having a big chest and arms, or feeling great and moving great and having a blood profile that's going to let you live to 80? I would hope you'd say the second one. And so what are some more reasons why you should strength train without being a dead horse? Bone density and tendon health. Okay. So we see people, bodybuilders, that are needing all kinds of surgeries. And I probably need a surgery on my shoulder and my knee. Not so much from bodybuilding, but from other stuff. And a lot of it's the weight they have to carry around. So my surgery on my knee, I think it's meniscus, is going to have to be expedited, probably because I'm 260 pounds. If I was 200 pounds, it probably wouldn't have gotten to the point it has now, even though it wasn't in the gym. It was like a dog ran into my knee randomly a long time ago. But it probably wouldn't have deteriorated to the point it is now if I hadn't weighed so much, So weight training really isn't the cause of orthopedic injuries. It's contrary to that. It's one of the leading protectors of your orthopedic capabilities. So everybody knows that weight training increases bone density. And everybody knows that responsible weight training improves tendon health. And especially with women, I feel like, and more so from like my generation and previous generations, when women get to their 30s, 40s, and especially 50s, they start having massive orthopedic injuries, like incidents where they break a hip, break a bone in their foot, back issues, elbow issues, wrist issues. And while directly that doesn't cause a shortened lifespan, what does that cause? That causes a further reduction in daily activities. So you're already not moving around as much because you're stressed out. So you're not sleeping as well. You're chronic inflammation everywhere. And then because you haven't lifted weights, in the times you do go to the gym, because the society, it's getting better, thank God, but it's like women have to be skinny. Like, oh, she looks like a man, or you think you're going to look like a man if you lift weights. And like they avoid it like the plague. And then the next thing you know, they break a fucking hip when they're 45 years old. It's bone density and tendon health. And orthopedic injuries are the most devastating thing to people in their 50s and 60s. Like it changes their entire lives. They don't heal from it. The surgeries often have complications. And then their quality of life diminishes. And then because they're not moving around as much, then all of a sudden they become even less insulin sensitive, and they have higher blood sugar, and their eyes go out, and they start to have mental and cognitive decline, like I'm feeling like I'm having this morning. But it's all because of a lack of resistance training, strength training. And another thing in America, when we think strength training, we picture barbells, all right? And God damn it, it doesn't have to be that way. Strength training can be calisthenics if you want it to be. It can be some types of yoga, even some types. It can be Pilates. It probably shouldn't just be yoga or Pilates, but that can contribute to the volume. It can be kettlebells. It can be TRX. It can be dumbbells. Like it can, be a lot of other things like landmine training and things. So it doesn't have to just be a barbell where you have a bunch of weight on your back or you're on a bench press, even though that's a great way to do it. So that's my plea to people is there's a few things. Reconsider what strength training is and what it's doing for you and how you go about it. Reconsider what your priorities are rather than on just, enhancing your aesthetics. Strength train in a way that builds your core and your bigger muscles and your movement patterns and capabilities, which will also make you look better, okay? And just understand fully all of the benefits that strength training brings to your life. And I understand cardio is very important. I just did a podcast on how important cardio was. But, if you were just doing cardio and thinking you're healthy, because cardio becomes very addicting. You get, just like weight training, bodybuilding, you get good at running, you feel great, you release endorphins, all that stuff. You just want to do it again, and that's great until you break a hip or until you start to suffer severe arthritis from overuse, and then it's not so great. And for the people that love cardio, love to go out and just ride a bike or run distance, I got it, man. You love cardio as much as I hate cardio. But, you don't need a ton of strength training. You don't need to lift like a bodybuilder. And for the women out there, in case you're still living in the 1960s, okay, strength training will not turn you into a bodybuilder. You just have no clue. If you haven't lifted weights, and there's probably not very many women listening to this, but if there is a woman in your life and you're listening to this, pause it and you can go get her. And I'll tell her directly. You have no clue how hard it is to gain muscle. Maybe at first you'll gain a little bit of muscle because you get the newbie gains, right? But after that short amount of wonderful time when you can gain muscle very easily, it is so hard to gain muscle. You think you're going to accidentally look like a bodybuilder, you've lost your fucking mind, okay? And like anything else, you can lift as much as you want, as often as you want. As long as you don't couple that with stuffing your face, you're not going to gain much size at all. You're going to gain strength, okay? I think we all know that, but some people, they just don't know. I just assume people know these things by now, but I guess they don't. You're not going to look like a bodybuilder. You're going to become even more attractive. I'm assuming you're very attractive. I'm sure your husband thinks so. So you're going to become more attractive, all right? And I kind of thought it was a myth that was dispelled long ago, based on the circles I run in. But I still, there were some people in my social circle not too long ago where the women were just terrified of lifting weights. And go figure, because like they were about my age, they were starting to have all kinds of orthopedic issues. All right. Also, having muscle mass is going to help you do things like fast and control your appetite, because you won't get as hungry, because you won't get those signals of low blood sugar or low glucose. You're going to release glycogen and stuff into your system, and you'll be able to train harder. Because when people first start training, because they're not very metabolically flexible, they get really hungry and then they have a hard time losing weight because their appetite goes up. But once you gain a little bit of muscle, you'll be able to train way more intensely, and you won't have those like huge increases in your hunger levels after you do that either. So, takeaways here. We don't gain weight and start feeling like shit. First of all, everybody's going to start to feel like shit eventually because we have an expiration date, okay? But we don't gain weight and we don't start feeling like shit because our metabolism dropped. Because if it dropped, it only dropped a little bit, and it dropped because you lost muscle. But mainly our lifestyles change. You just stop moving around as much. And no hate. I went over why, and it is so hard not to. Okay. But we have to be extra diligent to get up earlier and make ourselves maybe go for a weighted walk. We have to be extra diligent to at night when we just want to, lay there and not go to the gym, at least get up and do some push-ups, or, have a treadmill or something in the house that you can walk on or something. We have to take steps, right? But mainly you have to start lifting weights on a regular basis and start lifting it in a way that's going to prolong your life rather than just make you look good. And I feel you. Like, look at me. I feel you. I grew up as a bodybuilder. I'm right there with you, and I'm struggling with it too. But, man to man, person to person, whoever's watching this, like, let's come to an agreement here. Like, we still want to look good, and we still will look good, and there will still be a little bit of bodybuilding mixed in there. But we have to start changing our priorities. and start working out, not just to be athletic, because that's my thing. I want to be big. I want to be strong. I want to be athletic. And I got it. I'm trying still. But mainly I want to be around when my son has children of his own. And not just be around, but I want to be able to see them and play with them and still be mentally there to enjoy them and joke with them and laugh with them and have the energy to enjoy my grandkids. That's my priority now. And if you're 20 years old, I know, and you listen to this, a few people are, or 25, you can't understand that. You can't understand how when you're older, your priority isn't going to be living on a yacht and having a lot of money and women around you and stuff like that. It's going to be your grandkids, and you're going to want to live to see and enjoy your grandkids because you love your kids so much. You want to be on this earth for as long as you can to get to enjoy them and watch them live their lives and be able to live life around them. You know, because we all want to live our own lives. We're not going to live our life for our kids, but we want our kid to be part of our lives and we want to be part of theirs. And the choices you make now and the habits you make now in your 20s and 30s, it's going to be really hard to overcome that and fix those things when you're in your 50s and 60s. So please start making those changes now. And let's make an agreement. Like, let's start lifting weights for our health and for the people around us because we love them and not just because we want to look good, because we can have both. But that's pretty much all I have for y'all, and hope y'all have a great day.